Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome back to Unlocking ILM. Today we're joined by a very special guest, Sr.Shireen.
Assalamualaikum.
She's a beloved high school teacher here at ILM and has played a big role in helping our high school grow, even teaching some of our very first graduates. She is originally from Lafayette, Indiana, and has graduated from Purdue University with a bachelor's degree in education and a master's in curriculum and instruction. We're so excited to have her on the podcast.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, great. How about you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm great. So, we know you grew up in Indiana. Tell us about your experience there, and was there a big Muslim community?
There was not a big Muslim community. The town that I grew up in is very much a college town and an industry town. So there are big major factories there. So you have like a majority working class white population. And then you have Muslim population, very few that are mostly professionals. So you have your engineers, doctors, and business owners. And then you have the university there. So the university brings in a lot of Muslims as students, but they're temporary. They come, they study, and they leave. So it's a more, small community. We did not have a full-time Islamic school there growing up. So I grew up at the weekend school at the masjid.
That's amazing, mashallah. Was there a moment in your childhood or teen years when being visibly Muslim in America felt especially hard? What would you tell yourself now to overcome that feeling, and how would you turn your knowledge into action in that situation?
So the biggest thing was 9/11. Prior to 9/11, I was in public school. There was no Islamic schools. So during my middle school years, I would say people were very curious about my family. Again, very, very majority white. My mom is in hijab, and I used to play sports in middle school. So I was on like every team you can imagine. And when she would drop me off or pick me up, people were curious about us. And then I remember fasting in Ramadan. And everybody, at the end of Ramadan, one time my coach had said, "Thank you for teaching me about your culture." And I remember at that point, I was like, but it's not my culture, it's my religion. And then I felt bad that I hadn't done more to like inform in the correct way. And then 9/11 happened when I was a sophomore in high school. And that was a big turning point. I was in hijab, so everyone knew we were visibly, Muslim in the high school, and that was just a shift. And it became a talking point in classes and history class and government class, all the classes that I'm teaching now. So I remember one of my teachers point blank asked me like, okay, here's example of Americans of like Japanese Americans after internment, changing their names to white names to prove their Americanness. Would you do that? So I was constantly put on the spot, like, what would you do? What would you do if you could confront Osama bin Laden? What would you? So I was like this spokesperson all the time. So it made me formulate answers and learn how to talk about these things, and also be like a true, like I felt that pressure to represent Islam, correctly. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. That 9/11 was definitely a turning point, probably.
No, it does. Thank you so much. What would you say to a high school student who feels like they don't fit in or are afraid to be openly Muslim?
I know it's hard to tell somebody to be confident, but I feel like when you are poised and confident and can articulate an answer, it's more admirable than shying away from the fact and being that, oh, change the name, or don't be visibly Muslim, or don't go and pray in the library because you're afraid. Like, the people who are open and unapologetic are more admired and more respected, and people look to you for answers instead of not acknowledging, your existence or alienating you. So I say own it.
After high school, you went on to study education at Purdue University. Tell us about your experience as a Muslim woman in Purdue University.
College was good. It was a good experience. I will say, when you get to college, because everyone is really you're specializing in your area. So there was a lot of Muslim women in like the engineering or in science, or there weren't a lot of Muslim women in education at the time. Like there was maybe be two at the time. And so we bonded. But again, that constant having, because there's so few, you are really the only point of contact and representative they know. So you kind of have to be, it forces you to be knowledgeable, forces you to research your stuff, know your stuff, and represent yourself well. But the MSA was active. We had a lot of dawa opportunities, which was good.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Was there ever a moment where you had to speak up for your identity or your beliefs, and how did that experience change you?
Yes, again, all the time. It was a constant theme growing up. We didn't have a big Muslim community. It wasn't a diverse area. So I was constantly speaking about my identity. Where are you from? Where is your family from? What is your religion? How come you're fasting? How come you're wearing hijab? How come you have all the how comes? So, having to explain all that, it did give me a sense of knowing how to answer, being articulate, and then we spun this constant questions into a Dawa program, which I think we're going to talk about in a little bit. It made me a teacher, I want to say. It made me confident to stand up in front of a room and talk about things.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. How did you, after you completed your bachelor's, you decided to do your master's, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that decision, and what advice would you give high school students that want to make big decisions like that?
So at the time, I actually finished my undergrad early in 3 years, so I was done young. And when I finished young, I was offered a job right away at the school that I was student teaching at. It's a big public high school in Lafayette called Jefferson High School. And they needed me and they gave me an offer. And I was 21 years old and I taught all the way through senior year. So I was 21 teaching 18-year-old men. And I just said, you know what, I'm young and I have the time and I wasn't married. My parents, provided for me. And my dad's like, you can just go straight into your master's. He gave me that advice. And you'll come out a little bit older, a little bit with another, degree. And it would probably be better to start then than to start young and then have to go to work and then go back to school. I figured if I leave school now, it will be harder to go back. So that kind of factored into my decision. So I decided to work. I substituted at the school. And then when I was doing my master's, actually, the university hired me to teach an undergraduate course. So I taught that for 2 years. They gave me an office in a really nice building, and I had a parking spot, and it felt very official. So I was like, it was my first job. I mean, you didn't get paid much, but they paid your tuition. They gave you a monthly stipend. So I felt it was the nice middle ground between working and studying. So I finished that. I finished quickly my master's too. I did it in 1.5 years. And when I finished, I actually got married and moved away from my family. So all of that was advice I would give would maybe be to slow down. Not everything has to be done so quickly. You don't have to have everything figured out right away. Sometimes it can take time to find your true, purpose. And I think people should sit and reflect on themselves. Who am I? What do I want to do? And take the time to make those decisions.
Well, adding on to the point of reflection, looking back, what was one lesson that you learned outside the classroom that stuck with you longer than anything in the textbook?
The thing that stuck with me longer than anything in a textbook is the opportunity to give dawah in front of diverse groups. That experience for me, and I've talked with the students before. We did a dawah presentation in the community I grew up in. We put together a short PowerPoint that explained the 6 beliefs that Muslims have and then the 5 pillars of practice. So kind of separating that, okay, I'm praying, but that doesn't explain what Muslims believe. They just see somebody praying. So the 6 pillars of Iman. So we put a nice presentation together. Muslims believe in all of the angels. Muslims believe in all of the books. Muslims believe in all of the prophets. And it was a PowerPoint that we went and gave to like a high school social studies class or a middle school social studies class or a church congregation on a weeknight, not like during their Sunday church. So instead of them learning about Islam from the textbook and their regular social studies teacher teaching it without any context, we would go in and actually teach the lesson for them. This was an MSA project that we did together. And it actually became really popular. And most of the middle schools and high schools in the area would send an email requesting the Purdue MSA. We're learning about Chapter 7 Islam on this date. Would the MSA be able to come in and do that presentation? And it became a regular thing. And I remember during one of the high school teachers, she point blank told us, she's like, you were meant to be a teacher. And so that experience through, college and like solidifying what it is I want to do, finding my purpose, I think that experience, and this was literally just through the MSA. That experience kind of shaped me more than any textbook could.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Allahumma barak. If you could turn one piece of advice to high school students on how they could turn what they know into something meaningful, what would it be?
Okay. I touched upon this a little bit, but I would really say to slow down. Even like when you're studying and when you're struggling, to like sit and think about who you are, what makes you unique, and how you can bring those skills. Okay, you want to go to college, you want to study something, then you want to get a job and you want to make money. But why? Like, what is that true purpose? Okay, our purpose is to worship Allah. We all know that. How are you going to do that? It's not just, worshiping it is not just praying and fasting that benefits you. How are you going to benefit others? So even if you study, your CS degree and you get a job at a company, doing whatever, your knowledge is to serve others. Like, we are made to better wherever we are. We better the community that we're in. We better the place that we're in. We better people's lives. We better with advancing with things that makes comfort, advancement and progression. I think to reframe that in your mind helps you focus, really. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair for coming on today. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Ayaki.